So when we are talking about the Protestant Reformation, I mean, people might hear the Protestant Reformation and immediately think, oh, here we go. This is going to be a lecture all about religious doctrine and church affairs and so forth. And while there is a little bit of that, the reality is the Protestant Reformation is actually significant for much, much, much more some wider, more significant reasons than just a particular change of religious thinking or the birth of a new religious denomination. In fact, the Protestant Reformation becomes intertwined as one of the catalysts of really fundamental change in Europe, the emergence of really modernity. It's the beginning, in a lot of respects, of fundamental transformations in religion, in political and nation state development, in some cases, economic thinking, even, obviously, religious thinking, scientific thinking as well is connected to the Protestant Reformation. And so when we start thinking about the emergence of modern Western Europe and Western civilization, you start with the Protestant Reformation because it's really the first major event in transforming Europe. And in the case of the Protestant Reformation, I think you would say that its biggest effect would be a transformation in the area of governance, of nation states, and of religion. But it is a lot more than that, and you'll see as we begin to discuss why that's the case. This section of the class, we will be examining, though, transformation along lines of not only governing structures, but also the emergence of the international nation-state system, changes in the philosophy and scientific thinking, as well as economics, religion, war, and so forth. This is a really fundamental period of time. We're talking about critical transformations really in the 1500s and the 1600s, and even a little beyond. Technological change is very important. Now, we've talked about how the driving force of historical change for world historians is the analysis of global interconnectivity, that concept of global interconnectivity, which refers to the inherent interconnections of the world. And world historians examine the manner in which those interconnections shaped the world of the future. So that's the big term, right? Global interconnectivity. But then when you look underneath that big sort of lens of analysis, we look at more specific things as well. And one of the big ones driving change is technology. Technology is at the heart of significant transformations that make the world what it is today. And if we were to examine these changes from the 1400s, the 1500s, the 1600s, and in the 1800s, and of course beyond, you would find a number of technological game changers that are really inherent to the emergence of the modern world at this time. Now, the steam engine, which wasn't really invented by James Watt kind of perfected it, but that was at the end of the 1700s, so that's a little bit more removed from this period, but I included the steam engine on this list because, of course, that coming out of this period will be integral to the emergence of the Industrial Revolution and of new abilities of humans to harness their environment and fossil fuels to create more efficient methods of manufacturing, of traveling, of communicating, of illuminating buildings, these types of things. And of course, that is massively significant to the modern world. And we will be getting to that, though we're going to get to that a little bit after some of these other areas. The printing press, of course, which was developed in Europe, at least, by Johannes Gutenberg in the middle of the 15th century, is one of the most vital technological game changers, because the printing press, movable type printing, allowed for the printing of manuscripts in people's spoken vernacular, their spoken tongue. So now you were moving away from the widespread usage, for example, of something like Latin to printing things in French or German or English, for example. And that will increase an increased amount of literacy, though it takes time for you to be looking at the literacy rates of the 20th century. Many people remained illiterate despite the printing press's existence. But for reformers and other individuals in the upper classes of society, the printing press really revolutionized people's ability to read, to write, and communicate. And this, of course, opens the door to the possibility of examining, evaluating, critiquing the doctrine of the Catholic Church, which, of course, is, during the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church was the hub of political power in Europe. And it is the printing press that really will fuel some of the criticism to the Catholic Church, particularly during the movement of reformers like Martin Luther or Erasmus, for example, who began to critique some elements of the doctrine of the Catholic Church. Of course, during this period of time, we will also see the development of the microscope. Giovanni Faber is usually associated with that. The telescope with Galileo, the Italian astronomer. And these are all very, very significant to the emergence of the modern world. And a number of reasons why. Obviously, the first one with James Watt, again, that's kind of on the latter end of this, but it's still added in here because we're going to be talking about this as we move forward in examining some of these incredibly important transformations. The Industrial Revolution, which changes how people live, it changes how people work, it changes how many people are on the world, it changes how we farm, it literally changes every element of human life. And we will be getting to that when we get to the second test section. It'll be the first thing we look at. These are also very significant because, of course, things like the printing press will inspire events like the Protestant Reformation. The printing press, too, ultimately will be responsible for inspiring the revolutionary age with the French Revolution, the American Revolution before it, and many, many other revolutionary activities that continued to swell up in Europe throughout the 1800s. But initially, the Protestant Reformation is really made possible by the printing press of Johannes Gutenberg. And of course, the telescope and the microscope, big change here, right? The scientific understanding of human existence. Before, and we will be getting to this in our next PowerPoint on the scientific revolution, but just to give us this as a prepper in advance, before Galileo begins to find the Jupiter system with the moons of Jupiter, before these revelations occur, really understanding of the cosmos was based on the doctrine of the Catholic Church. And with the printing press, you begin to see the ability to study, to publish. And when somebody like Galileo begins making these incredible discoveries about the cosmos and begins publishing it, well, it really changes how people understand and know about their world. Knowledge of the world, knowledge of your existence before the scientific revolution, it's really down to church doctrine and the authority of people who explain to followers the nature of things. With the printing press, you not only see the Protestant Reformation emerge, but you also see the emergence of the scientific revolution, in which publishing becomes an integral part of understanding through observation and through analysis of written resources or otherwise, the nature of the physical world of existence. And that changes how we think about knowledge. That changes how we think about the world. It really creates a new way of knowing in the world. This all starts really in the middle of the 15th century with the emergence of the printing press. What this map, what you're looking at here, is Western European printing cities. It all really starts here in Strasbourg. It starts really in these cities, not necessarily Strasbourg inherently, I mean, but these cities of what is today France and Germany. Strasbourg is today in France, though it's a borderland. And so it's in places like Strasbourg where you see the emergence of the first printing presses, and you start to see increased printing activity and publication of books. And the first books would, of course, been Bibles printed in the vernacular.